he was a good student of the information centers in Egypt, and now he is a good listening one and building his views not only from his point of view, but from the company team, which is very important for him to support in the decision making. Our problem from the last 4 years was really, from my point of view, the decision making, not the decision taking. The decision making depends on expert groups to prepare and do every homework for any decision. Maybe a relation with some country, maybe economic relations, maybe water relations. So these decision-making expert groups was far from the table of discussion in the last years. I think, as I see now, Mr. President Sisi is a real man working to collect these groups for the decision making on a round table for every subject to be introduced. When he is now in Addis Ababa, there must be a discussion for the water relationships in between Egypt and
it's the
most important from our point of view. Some negotiation to extend the work of the Egyptian companies outside, and I think that Mr. Prime Minister now he is a really good and very good contractor Prime Minister.
I believe that many Egyptian companies are having major problems.
Must go and extend, because this will be facilitating the use of power force in Egypt, outside Egypt. This is when the university staff members, we have a lot and more and more excess number at the Egyptian university. They can travel and to go and introduce help and expert in the African universities and facilitate the indirect contact between Egypt, the popularity of Egypt, the popularity of these countries. This will build a new standards for the Egyptian-African relationships. In the days of Mubarak, most of the African countries, and I see from my students when I was in Libya, there was a lot of African students studying at Fatih University. So they are telling us, you are in one standard and we are in a low standard. Why you look for us by this way? I told them, no, now you are here, you are my son, you are my student. See, they told me why they didn't accept to come to our countries. Open some universities there, some branches for Egyptian universities, and we can be learning in our country under the supervision of Egyptian staff members. So we have to do this. The relation in the medical facilities and medical aids, we have a lot of number of doctors. They can go at least. We can send to every country 1,000. We are able to do this. The commercial relationships will be built on these.
After this moment, Dr. Aref, I believe that the economic and trade ties between Egypt and many African countries are not up to the expected levels.
Yes, I have some data about the Egyptian African commercial relationships. You know that here, as I have a curve and the data, from 21 to 2013-14, the curve started to be going slowly up and stopped returning back, especially in the 3 years after the revolution, and stopped down. Now returned back the relations, commercial relationships, they started to come, and we are asking, but the commercial balance is in the side of some African countries. We have to import the meat and so and so and so, and we can export for them a lot of things, but there is no representatives for the companies, for the Ministry of Commerce, for Egypt in these countries to make...
So you believe that many steps should be taken now in order to facilitate the investment and trade between Egypt and the African states?
We have to be honest with ourselves in our industry to be on the level of international standards. This number one, to market for this outside, and there was a Nasr company in the last years, and now most of the office of Nasr company has been stopped in Africa. This company, really I ask the Egyptian authorities to make reopening for the office of the Nasr company in the African countries, because those who was going outside and dealing with the African countries, they know how to penetrate. The penetration of the African market is not so easy. We have a lot of competitors, China, Malaysia, and Singapore, and so on, Korea. They are very strong competitive, and they go, and we know that the Chinese themselves came to our country, and they knocked our door. So how can we imagine the competition in between us and China? We have to work, we have to respect ourselves, we have to be honest with ourselves in our relations with Africa, and we have to be going in the street, knocking the doors, not only the doors of the home, but knocking the doors of the representatives or the responsible keys, and go to these countries.
So do you only on the official level, or even the Egyptian businessmen should start to expand their investment and their presence in Africa? As you have just mentioned kindly, that many Chinese companies, the Chinese government itself is investing and having very close economic ties with the many African states. So why we are not doing the same up in this moment?
I can tell you something. And I know this really because I was sharing. The Chinese came to Egypt and they asked you for the size of your body and size of my body and so on. So they took the data and went there, because in every country you can have a note that the standards of the body, human bodies, different from country to country. So they went and took this data to the companies there in China, and they exported the standard and right things. We are not doing the homework for our companies. The businessman, the business company, all these, and when I mentioned that Mr. Mehlib, Mr. Engineer Mehlib, the Prime Minister, and I told that he is a good Prime Minister, contracting Prime Minister. He know and understand very well what I mean by this, and he can do a mission go to Africa. Every country has to be, because the benefit will be for the companies. So they can do and do their homework in these countries. The net profit, the net revenue will be on the companies and on Egypt.
And to shed more light on the Egyptian-African relations after the January 25th revolution, we are joined over the phone by Dr. Amani Tawil, the head of the African program at Al Ahram newspaper. Dr. Amani. Dr. Amani? Hello? Dr. Amani? Hello? I believe we are having a technical problem, and back to our dear guest in the studio, Dr. Aref. Dr. Aref, Egypt is fighting terrorism, and many African countries are also having the same problem. They are suffering from the rise of violence and terrorism in their countries, like of course in Somalia, in Kenya, in Nigeria, in Mali, in Egypt. How can we unite our efforts in order to combat this very alarming phenomenon which is threatening the whole continent and the whole world?
this is the last point I was writing,
Yeah, please.
to be one of the most important head points in front of Mr. President Sisi in the African Summit in Addis Ababa. Because unless we unify our efforts to struggle against the terrorism in Africa, we will be here not only in the African country but here in Egypt, like
the whole world. We have seen what
the Western Balkans. We know, and now in Libya, you know that the main reason for the going down of the petrol prices is the Daesh. Daesh is a newborn from Qaeda, and United States, they tried and supported and militarized and trained and all these things. United States, Turkey and Israel and Iran. This is the most important thing in this area. Daesh now, how can they extract oil and then export it through Jihan seaport and buy it by $20 at most for one unit, and so they make the price down. Now they have to remember that they did this, but inshallah this will be returned back on them and started in France, started in the Arabian countries, because the main supply coming from USA, coming from Arabian countries to these military terrorism groups using Islam as a name, and they are willing to destroy Islam, to destroy and to partition all the area, and Africa the same, because they need Africa, they need the Arabic area to be exporting only the raw materials, for the raw materials, not as a country, not to live as countries. As I think now they will start to rethink about how to deal with the terrorism in Addis Ababa. I think that there must be a new deal with terrorism and some decisions, and I think it is really from our point of view in Egypt, because now we are dealing with terrorism, but with slowly but sure steps.
Hopefully, Dr. Aref, the CEO, the Deputy Head of the Party, thank you very much, sir, for your input. And our viewers, now we come to the end of our special coverage for this hour. Today we are marking the 4th anniversary of the January 25th revolution. Please stay tuned for more special coverage coming up on Nile TV International.